This matrix, this world we think is real, is merely an illusion generated by our own minds and doesn't actually exist. It is a holographic illusion. By manipulating our sense of reality, conditioning our sense of reality, that belief in what is real, manifests itself as a three-dimensional holographic illusion. And that if we start to realize that we are creating that reality we don't like, we can take control of our consciousness back from the conditioning, disconnect, decondition from the reality we're conditioned to believe in, and create a completely different illusion. It'll still be an illusion, but it will be a nicer illusion. Infinite love is the only truth. Everything else is illusion. In other words, the oneness of everything is the only truth. Everything on top of that are the illusions that one consciousness creates for itself. Infinite love is the only truth. Everything else is illusion. Oneness. Associate with being one, not apart. You know, when you hold a droplet of water, seawater in your hand, it seems to be a droplet because it's disconnected from its ocean of infinity. But you drop that droplet back in the ocean, and where's the droplet and where's the ocean? The droplet is now the ocean. Is what the manipulators have done is give us the illusion of division from being oneness, identify with being Bill Jones or Mary Smith, and because we accept the reality of division, we create the illusion of division. We are still one, but we now have the illusion of not being, and so that becomes our experience. And there's another interesting thing, what it said was, that's basically the matrix. Divided in our minds from oneness, but not in reality, only in our minds. And what it said was, interesting, if it vibrates, it's illusion. And where I was did not vibrate, because it said this, the vibrational frequencies, dimensions and stuff, that we go to, most people, after we leave this dimension, we move off it, so-called death, not that it exists, we transform to another level of existence without this form. That is also the matrix, because it still vibrates. It might be a more enlightened level of the matrix, less dense than this one, but it's still the matrix. And reincarnation, it said, is merely consciousness in a disconnected state moving from different levels of the matrix and back into this one. The whole idea of the matrix is division and duality, dividing oneness into constituent parts, which it can then play off against each other, left and right, negative and positive. And oneness is oneness. There's not two, there's one. Therefore, it has nothing, because what is a vibration? It's 2 points, an oscillation between 2 points. Oneness is oneness. There is no other point. How can it oscillate? It must be still. It just is. The matrix is frequency, is vibration, and if it vibrates, it's still illusion. This level of the matrix this 5-sense level, is a time loop. It's the illusion of passing from past to future when there is no time. And because oneness, and I experienced this when I was in that state, there was no time. Everything just was in that moment. And so to keep us disconnected from oneness, the matrix has created the illusion of time, moving from past through present to future. And if you are connected to the illusion and think it's real of time, you cannot be fully connected consciously to oneness where there is no time. So the physical form is programmed to go through a period of aging, which fundamentally confirms, yes, time exists. Night and day and all this stuff. And when you get people who go into these other states, no matter who they are and how they do it, the common theme is, I was everything, I was at one with everything, and there was no time. The time is an illusion, and they manipulate time. We are not this physical form. This is a vehicle to experience this world, and this actually doesn't exist, as I'll get to in a second. It's a holographic illusion also. And if it's a holographic illusion, how can it age? Because we believe it can, therefore we program it to do so. We are consciousness, connected to all other consciousness, which kind of, when you think about it, if we stood in front of a mirror and smacked ourselves with a baseball bat, we'd say, hey, call the guys in the white coat, what are you doing? Because we've lost the understanding that we are all one consciousness, we have Arab suicide bombers killing Jewish people, a Jewish army killing Arab people, and they're killing their freaking self, if you understand the level of oneness. It's the disconnection, the identification with division that allows these things to happen. The matrix to work has to give the illusion of division. And if we knew we were all one, would we do the things to each other we do? Of course we wouldn't. And so we have to be manipulated to believe that. So, we are actually consciousness, and we're not the physical body at all. We are energy, consciousness, infinite consciousness. We are not what we are told we are, which is a physical form. Identify with your body. It's too thin, it's too fat. You're the wrong sex, you're the wrong gula. Bloody nonsense. We get sold and we believe. There's not black oneness and Jewish oneness and white Aryan study oneness. There is oneness, that's all there is. We are each other. This is the reason they want to keep us, as I started off the day, in this disconnected state in the eggshell, because then once we stop connecting with that and becoming vehicles of oneness to experience this world, we disconnect in our minds from that knowledge, wisdom, perception, intuitive knowing, and therefore at that point we have one point at which to get access on what's going on in the world and who we are, and that's this. So if you can manipulate reality to disconnect people because they don't think they're oneness, they think they're Fred Bloggs, you disconnect them from that level of their infinite knowing, and you also control what's coming in here, so you program the droplet with your reality. And that's why right the way through the ages, people who have talked about this have been ridiculed, called dangerous, burnt at the sodding stake. It's the most dangerous information to the whole existence of this manipulation. What is reality? Answer, whatever we think it is. I thought, okay, I'm going to check this bloody thing out. So I started looking at the experiments in quantum physics and all this stuff to see if this whole kind of illusion idea that I was told actually stood up in this reality. And I realized some amazing things. Do you know when we say, I saw it with my own eyes? No, you did not. We don't see with our eyes, I didn't know that. We see with the visual cortex in the brain. And experiments have shown with people that we edit up to and sometimes more than 50% of the detail that comes out in through the eyes as it passes through the different levels of the brain, like the temporal lobes and stuff. We put in and take out detail on the basis of what we believe we should be seeing. And funnily enough, right at the start of this reptilian thing, when I met Credo Mutua, I said, what if these people exist? Why don't we see them, more of them? And he said, because the brain, this is a kind of primitive shaman in Africa. Genius, the man is. He said, because the brain edits out what people don't expect to see or don't want to see. They edit out and they don't actually register it. And this is what these experiments are finding. So, again, even on this level, if you can program the belief of someone, what they believe to be real, they'll bloody edit and create what you condition them to believe. And that's why when we start to open up and disconnect from the programming, go into a process of unlearning what we've been told, we then start to see things we haven't seen before, because we're no longer being dictated to by the programming on the basis of what we should see. This is the real bottom line of the manipulation. I mean, I saw this proverb, where there is love, there is pain. Bollocks. No pain, no gain. Illusion! We only feel pain in the brain when we bash our foot. We don't feel it in the toe, we feel it in the brain. That's where it registers. Everything comes up to here. We don't have to have pain. We just think we do. So we do. The world cannot be solid. It can't be. It seems to be. It can't be. Impossible. What do scientists say the physical world is made of? It's made of atoms, mate. Everyone knows that. Oh, have you seen the inside of an atom? It's friggin' empty. As one physicist said, I saw in a book, if you symbolize an atom to be the size of a cathedral, things like the particles within it will be about the size of a 10-cent piece. The rest of it is what, to our reality, though nothing is, empty space. How the bloody hell can a solid physical world be solid if it's made up of atoms that are as least solid as you could possibly imagine? Only because of the illusion we're creating in the holographic world we are manipulated to believe in. The more I understand about this, the more I learn about this, this seems to be the game. Experiments have shown that about 1.5 seconds before the conscious mind decides to take an action, move its arm, speak, 1.5 seconds before the conscious mind says, I'm going to do that, the electrical signals have begun in the brain to make it happen. So where's the real engine room of behavior here? Certainly not in the conscious mind. It's an experiencer, it's an observer. The real power of the mind is in the subconscious mind. And before I got into any of this, it was very clear that the Illuminati target the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, more than anything else. They are powering in there with subliminals, creating a certain reality, and from that subconscious mind, we are creating the waveform patterns that we then, at the conscious mind level, decode into holographic illusions. If you can program the reality and the beliefs of the subconscious mind, you create the reality that decodes into what it thinks is real. The subconscious mind is the target for that reason. So, that is a hologram we think is real, when really it's just wave patterns. And it's not just the wave patterns that we create. It's not that we all look at the same place and say, oh, I think that's a tower and I think that's a building. Yes, all right. It goes beyond that. The matrix is, at this level anyway, what I call consensus reality. And it works like this. And ended was consensus reality. We're talking about this picture here, about how when information comes in through the eyes, it's actually waveform, not actually three-dimensional cars and rooms and walls. Our brains do that. And it's interesting that when information comes into the eye, it's upside down, it's backwards, and it's two-dimensional. How many people realize that? That when information comes in the eyes, it's two-dimensional. What happens is the brain then takes the two sources of information coming through the eyes. You know, like those video viewer things where you see those three-dimensional pictures when you look in. They work because each eye is given the same picture, and it puts the two together to create a three-dimensional image. Well, that's what the brain's doing every time we look around. So consensus reality is what I was mentioning in Brixton, that it's not just us, if you like, individual minds that are creating our reality, although we're giving our unique spin on it by the nature of our beliefs and what have you that create the reality that we think we experience. But there's a collective level, consensus reality I call it, which allows us to look at the world and basically agree on what we're seeing. For instance, if I looked out of that window, the cameraman here and everything, we would agree that there was a house over there. That's consensus reality. We might then, in our uniqueness, say, oh, I like that house, I don't like that house, I don't like the color, I do like that color. We would put our spin on it, but we would agree basically there's a house there. And this level of collective reality is what the psychiatrist Carl Jung called the collective unconscious. And this is where, in so many ways, the matrix lies, this matrix of illusion that we live in and think is real. There's a phenomenon that lots of people maybe know about now, which has been termed the 100th monkey syndrome. What they found was that once you showed a certain number, and it's only a few, of a species like monkeys, something new, suddenly, inexplicably, but it's not, all or many more of that species can suddenly do spontaneously, without being shown, what the few have had to be, if you like, taught to do. And the reason that phenomena is possible is that there is a level of each species, because we're all one anyway, the human race, the monkeys, whatever, where those minds are connected. And I can only kind of symbolize it, I suppose, as if your individual mind is a computer and the collective mind is like the internet, the World Wide Web. And when you symbolically learn something new, you might type it up and put it on the web. There it becomes available to anyone that wants to log into the web. The 100th monkey syndrome works like this, in the sense that once those monkeys or anyone has learned something new, that knowledge automatically gets transferred to the collective mind, the collective level of that species. And there, like the web and logging in, other members of that species can access that. And suddenly they can do something, they know something, without actually being shown. Like most so-called mysteries and inexplicable things, it's actually very simple what's happening. Because animals don't read the newspapers and watch the television, because they don't go through this ludicrous indoctrination system we call education, they are not desensitized. They are much more sensitive to these collective levels and these other levels of consciousness. So they access information very, very sensitively, very effectively in this way. But humans do it too. And so every time we learn something new, we are adding that into the collective mind. But in terms of collective reality, that collective mind is also influencing us in the other way, in the circle. And so once you have a human collective mind, human subconscious, collective subconscious, programmed with a reality, then unless as individuals we consciously disconnect from that reality, we are going to live that reality. So this is where this whole idea comes from, that we look outside and we all agree that there are certain things there. And this is a major level of the manipulation, because the Illuminati wish to program and indoctrinate the human collective unconscious mind with a manufactured reality which will then be real to the whole population. And that, in so many ways, is what the Matrix is. So if we look at this picture, again, what is happening is once the subconscious, this is the key level of the manipulation and indoctrination. Once the subconscious, whether it's the collective subconscious or the individual subconscious, takes on a reality, through those thought forms that sense of reality creates, the conscious mind then takes that information, observes those subconscious thought fields, and turns them, in the way I talked about earlier, into three-dimensional holographic illusions that we take to be real. And therefore, if you can program subconscious reality, you can create and manipulate what the human conscious mind believes is real. And that's what the Illuminati are doing all the time.